I want you to picture this. High in the mountains, the ice is melting after a long winter. Two hikers spot something brown in the snow. At first they think it's a broken stick or old gear. They get closer. It isn't a stick, it's a human hand. Rescue teams arrive. The body is not recent. The clothes are made of animal skin and grass. There is a small backpack. There are tools, a quiver. This is not a lost climber from last year. This person is ancient, frozen where he fell, sealed by ice for thousands of years. We bring him to the lab. Every move is careful and slow. The body is fragile, but the details are sharp. Skin, hair, fingernails, even the seams in his clothes. It feels like time paused and waited for us to find him. At first, people whisper, accident, a storm, a slip, a lonely death on a cold ridge. But then the scans come in. We study the chest and shoulder. We look again. Buried under the skin is a dark shape with a clean edge. It is not a rock. It is an arrowhead. Everything changes in 1 second. This is not a simple tragedy. This is a crime scene. We check his hands. We check the gear around him. We start to see a pattern. He was not empty-handed. He was not poor. He had a full kit. He had skill. He had a story. And someone ended it. So now the questions start. Who was this man really? Why was he up there? Was he trying to escape? Was he meeting someone? Did he know the killer? Before we go further, I want you to make a call. Type your gut feeling, accident or murder. Don't overthink it. Your first guess matters. We'll test it against the evidence. Because here's the truth that keeps me awake. An arrow in the back is not a mistake. Someone drew a bow, someone aimed, someone released. And here's the detail that bothers me the most. We'll get into it soon, but it starts right here at the first look. If this was a simple attack, why was the body left for the mountain to keep? Who fires an arrow, then leaves the body to the ice? Think about the thing that should have vanished first, the axe. It isn't stone. It isn't a cheap tool. It's copper. Metal that does not fall out of the sky. Someone had to dig the ore, crush it, smelt it in a hot fire, shape it, polish it, fix it to a handle. In Ötzi's world, that takes skill, time, and trade. A copper axe is not just a tool, it's status, it's wealth you can hold. So why is it still here? Any robber would grab it. Any rival who wanted to shame him would take it. Even a stranger would know its value at a glance. But the axe lies beside him, calm as if it belongs to the mountain now. This is the first crack in the random attack story. If the killer wanted things, they missed the best thing. If the killer was poor, they walked away richer and chose not to be. That makes no sense. Look at what the axe says about the man. He wasn't a nobody. He had connections or skill or both. You don't carry copper for fun. You carry it because you earned it or because people trust you with it. The axe tells us he could bargain, travel, and lead. He mattered. So why leave the symbol of his power? Maybe the killer panicked and ran, but the shot was clean. The scene is quiet. The axe is placed, not dropped in a struggle. Maybe the killer feared a curse or a taboo. But if that were true, why take other gear at all? Maybe the axe wasn't the goal because the killer's goal was him. This is where motive begins to change shape. If it's not about money, it's about message. A message to a clan, to a rival, to a family. He is gone. Or a message to the victim himself. I can reach you anywhere. Leaving the axe is like signing a note without ink. It says, I didn't come for your things, I came for you. There's another angle. If someone close did this, someone who knew what the axe meant, they might leave it on purpose. To make the death look like an accident. To keep questions small. To let the tribe think he simply never returned. But accidents don't bury arrowheads under the skin. Tell me what you think. If you stood over a rival with a copper axe at your feet, do you take it? Or do you leave it to make a point? Because that's the heart of this paradox. The most valuable object is untouched. The easiest prize in the world is ignored. That's not greed, that's intent. So ask yourself, if this wasn't robbery, what motive beats gold? Look closely at his skin. It isn't just skin, it's a map. Dark lines and small crosses run along his lower back, knees, ankles, and the back of his neck. More marks sit near his wrists and down the calves. Not random, not pretty. These aren't show-off tattoos, they look like work, like someone meant them to do something. The ink is simple. Soot or charcoal rubbed into tiny cuts. That sounds crude, but it tells us a lot. You only cut skin where it matters if you believe it helps, and these spots line up with places that hurt when you walk long distances in cold, thin air. Joints, tendons, the spine. The pattern whispers one word: pain. Think about his life. Climbing, hauling, sleeping rough on stone. Boots of leather and grass, not rubber and foam. Even a strong body wears down. The marks gather exactly where wear and tear would scream the loudest. If he had back pain, the lines on his lower spine track it. If his knees burned on steep slopes, the dots on the inside and outside of the joint match that too. Now picture the treatment. Heat a bone needle in the fire. Score shallow lines. Rub in soot. The cut bleeds, then seals. Underneath, the skin is irritated, the brain pays attention. Maybe the heat and the rush of blood reduce the ache for a while. Maybe the ritual itself brings calm. It's part medicine, part belief, part grit. Here's the twist. These aren't one-and-done marks. Some look older, faded. Others look fresher, darker. That means repeats. Sessions. He goes back for more, which suggests the pain kept returning and that he trusted whoever did this. A healer, a partner, a friend with steady hands, someone close. Someone. And the marks climb in places you don't choose for fashion. Down the calves, across the low back, near the ankles. This is therapy logic, not vanity. It even mirrors points modern people use with heat or needles. Different culture, same human problem. Pain that won't let go. What does that tell us about the man? He was stubborn. He kept moving even when his body argued back. He had knowledge, or he knew someone who did. He carried a copper axe. He also carried aches. He was important enough, or loved enough, to get time and care set aside for him. Now, the uncomfortable question. If he was living with pain, if his joints were tender, if his back flared under load, did someone else know? You don't hide a back that locks up on a climb. You don't hide the way your hand flexes after an old injury. People in your circle see it. They know when you're slow, when you favor one leg, when you pause at a steep pinch of trail. That matters in a world without rules you can call on. Strength keeps you safe. Weakness paints a target. So imagine a person who knows his routes, his limits, and his pain points. Imagine the timing of an ambush picked for when his body is at its worst. End of a long day, cold setting in, boots soaked. Imagine the angle chosen because turning fast would hurt. Type your read in the comments. Do these tattoos say resilience? Or do they also reveal a weakness someone could use? Because the marks speak to care and community, but they also mark a man who was hurting. And if someone close saw that hurt, they might have seen their moment. Did someone know he was injured and exploit it? Let's step into his last meal, because it tells us more than any witness ever could. Inside his stomach we find real food, not scraps. Roasted ibex and ancient grains. Fat, protein, starch. This wasn't a desperate snack grabbed on the run. This was cooked, planned, and eaten not long before he died. Quick myth bust? He wasn't starving on a lonely ridge. He ate well, and he ate recently. Now think about what that means. Roasted meat needs a fire. Grain needs grinding or soaking in some kind of hot stone or hearth. Out in alpine wind, that takes time, hands, and coordination. Could one person do all of that alone at altitude, fast with weather closing in? Maybe. But the neat part is the order. The layers in his gut show a proper meal, not random bites. Meat with grain, not just one or the other. That pattern usually means a shared routine. One person tends the fire while another preps the food, then they eat together. Details stack up. The meat looks trimmed. The fat is present, not burned off. The grains are processed, not raw. His mouth shows wear that fits a rough diet, but the final meal is careful. Someone took pride in the cooking. Someone made sure it was filling. That doesn't feel like a stranger. That feels like a partner, a friend, or a small group used to eating side by side. Why does that matter for the case? Because people don't share a proper meal with enemies. You don't sit close to the person you plan to kill unless you're hiding your intent. If he ate within hours of the attack, the window between trust and violence is razor thin. Either he left a warm camp and walked into danger, or danger was already at the fire with him. Ask yourself, if you were hungry, cold, and high on a mountain, who would you choose to cook with? Someone you know. Someone you believe won't harm you. Someone close enough to pass you the meat in the bowl. Here's the part that turns my stomach. The person who watched him eat, who maybe joked about the weather, who maybe handed him the best cut, that person also knew exactly how heavy he'd feel after a big meal, how slow the first steps are when you stand up, how your body is warm and relaxed and your guard is down. If a betrayal was coming, that was the moment to plan it. Your turn. Team 8 alone or Team 8 with someone? What's your read and why? Because the meal tells us two truths at once. He was cared for, and he was vulnerable. He filled his stomach and trusted the company, and a few hours later, an arrow found his back. So who shared the food, and why did that trust curdle into murder? There is one wound that changes everything: the cut on his hand. It is fresh, sharp, and right where you raise your palm to block a blow or grab a blade. That is not a work cut. That is a fight cut. The edges are clean, not healed. Blood tells us it happened shortly before he died, days, not weeks. He met someone and it turned violent. Picture the moment. A shout. A rush. Hands go up. Steel or stone flashes close. He reaches, pushes, maybe grabs the wrong end of a weapon. The skin splits. He jerks back. Pain surges. But he does not fall. He does not die there. He gets away. Now think about what that means for the rest of his day. A deep cut in the hand is not a small thing in the cold. It throbs, it weakens your grip, it slows you. Stringing a bow hurts, holding a staff hurts. Even tying a simple knot is harder. Every choice after that fight is made with a burning hand and less strength. So why keep moving? If this was a random clash, he could have turned downhill and hidden. He could have found shelter, waited, slept. Instead, he stays on the move. That tells me one of two things. Either he feared a second round and wanted distance, or he had unfinished business and refused to stop. Pride, duty, anger, or a promise. Pick your word. He does not act like a man in retreat. He acts like a man with a plan. The hand cut also narrows our suspect pool. Close-range wounds rarely come from strangers you never see again. Fights like this happen between people who step into each other's space. A rival, a partner, someone from the same trail. You don't grab an enemy's weapon unless you know where they'll swing. That kind of timing comes from familiarity. There's another layer. Remember his tattoos, those pain points on joints and spine. Add a fresh hand injury on top. He is now easier to corner, he tires faster. He can't climb as cleanly. If someone was hunting him, watching him, or just waiting for the right chance, this is the window. Weakness opens the door. But here's the part that keeps pulling me back. There's no sign of a panicked scramble in his last moments at the earlier scene. He wasn't stripped, he wasn't robbed. The copper axe is still his. Whoever fought him first did not take what mattered most. That suggests the first fight wasn't about gear, it was about him. So we are left with a hard truth. He survived a fight, he kept walking with a wounded hand, he chose, or was forced, to continue along a path that would bring him face to face with the end. Drop your read in the comments. Was that first clash with a stranger? Or with someone he knew? Because this is where the trail turns from pain to purpose. He escapes, but not for long. Something, fear, duty, or a voice he trusts, pulls him forward again. What forces him back onto the killer's path? Pollen sounds small, but in this case, it is a breadcrumb trail. Tiny grains of plant dust cling to everything. Clothes, gear, skin, even inside the mouth and gut. Different plants live at different heights on the mountain. Forest trees grow lower. Shrubs and grasses live higher. When we find these grains in layers, we can read his path like steps on a ladder. Here's what the story says. First, low-altitude pollen, the kind you breathe in a valley with trees and stream banks. Then, higher-altitude pollen from open slopes and alpine meadows. Down first, then up again. Why would anyone do that? If he was hurt and tired, the valley is safer. Food, water, shelter. Most people would stay down, but he climbs back into thin air where wind cuts and paths narrow. That choice is strange, unless there is a reason. Let's test a few simple reasons. Weather panic? Yep, a sudden change can send you up or down, but his route looks planned, not random. Hunting? Maybe he followed game, but his last meal says he already ate well. Hiding? High ground makes you hard to find, but it also makes you slow if you're injured. The cleanest answer is human. Meetings happen in known places, near a spring, a rock shelf, a pass that everyone uses. If you wanted to settle something, trade something, or ask for help, you would go where both sides can reach. A pass is perfect for that. It is also perfect for something darker. Think about the terrain near a pass. Trails squeeze together. Cliffs and drops block side exits. Sound gets swallowed by wind. You see the path ahead, but you cannot see who is above it. If you needed control over a moment, a pass gives it to you. Now add what we already know. He has a painful hand cut. He moves slower. He is still valuable enough to carry a copper axe. He walked down to where life is easier, and then walked back up to where paths are tight. Ask yourself, would you choose a hard climb with a fresh injury unless you had a date, a duty, or a promise? Drop your vote, meeting, hiding, or trap, and tell me why. Because Pollen does not lie. It shows a descent to safety, then a climb toward risk. It shows intention. It points to a place where one path bottlenecks into a single file of footprints. Who could lure him uphill toward a choke point? The scan shows the truth the eye can't see. The arrow came from behind and a little to the side. It slipped under his left arm, cut a major artery, and kept going. That kind of wound drops a person fast. There is no time to turn, no time to shout, no time to pull the arrow out. This was not a face-to-face fight. This was an ambush. Think about the angle. To hit that spot, the shooter needed a clean view of his left side as he moved forward. The shot comes from the rear quarter, behind him, slightly off to one side. That means the killer knew the trail and picked a bend where Ötzi would have to walk past with his guard down. He would be busy watching his footing, not his back. Now think about distance. The arrow had enough power to cut deep and still lodge inside. That suggests the shot was not from very far away. Close enough to aim with care? Close enough to see his breath in the cold. If you shoot that close, you are confident. You believe he won't spot you in time. Look at Ötzi's body for the next clue. There are no new cuts on his forearms from blocking a blade. No signs of turning to meet the attack. The pose tells a simple story. He didn't see it coming. When the arrow struck, the fight was over before it began. Why choose an ambush? Because it is safer. He was experienced. He knew the mountains. Wounding him from a hidden spot removes his strengths, his axe, his own bow, his hands. One clean shot takes all that away. It also avoids a loud struggle that might bring others. Here's a small but important detail. The killer did not walk down to finish him with a second strike or to take the copper axe. They disappeared. That tells us this shooter had a plan. Hit. Watch him fall, leave fast. Either they feared being seen, or they trusted the wound to do the rest. Now a hard question. Was it one person, or more than one? One archer can do this if they pick the ground well, but a team makes the trap tighter. One person could shadow him from behind, while another moves ahead to pick the bend. One watches his pace, the other waits at the choke point. If he spots the first, the second still has the shot. If he passes the second, the first can push him toward the bend. That is how you make sure the target stands where you want him. Ask yourself, do you see a lone hunter with a steady hand, or a pair who knew his habits and moved like a net around him? Drop your vote. Single shooter or team, and why? Because the wound, the angle, and the silence after the shot all say the same thing. This was careful work on chosen ground. It wasn't luck. It wasn't wild. One more thing keeps nagging at me. To pick a bend, to trust the shot, to leave the axe, you need more than hate. You need knowledge, you need timing, you need nerve. So was this one assassin lying in wait? Or a coordinated team that turned the mountain into a trap? Let's build the suspect board the way a hunter would. Simple, direct, no fluff. 3 columns: Bandit, Rival, Betrayal, and we test each against what we already know. Bandit. What fits? An ambush at a narrow bend is a bandit's dream. One clean shot from behind, quick exit. What doesn't? The copper axe. Any thief would take it first. It's portable wealth. Leaving it behind kills the robbery motive. Also, bandits don't usually know your exact route or meal timing. Our shooter seemed to. Rival. What fits? The fresh hand cut looks like a face-to-face clash he survived earlier. That screams feud or score settling. A rival would know his trails, his habits, even his pain points from those therapy tattoos. Leaving the axe becomes a message. This was about you, not your gear. What doesn't? Rivals don't share a careful, cooked meal hours before the kill, unless there was a false truce, a talk-it-out meet that turned into a setup. Betrayal, companion, or guide. What fits? The last meal felt shared. The Pollen trail shows he went down to safety, then back up, like meeting someone at a known pass. The ambush angle, rear quarter, matches a killer who walked behind him, knew his injured hand, and chose the bend where turning fast would hurt. A companion can set the pace, pick the hour, and vanish first. What doesn't? Risk of blame. Except there's no police, no forensics in his world. If the killer returns alone and shrugs, he never came back. The mountain hides the rest. Now the process of elimination. If it were Bandit, the axe is gone. It isn't. If it were Rival, we need a reason they're close enough to dine or parlay. The route back up provides it. A meeting spot with rules. Broken. Betrayal explains almost everything at once. Shared meal, planned route, chosen bend, clean shot, no looting. So where do I land, for now? Betrayal edges ahead. It ties the clues into one rope. Trust, timing, terrain. Your turn. Comment Bandit, Rival, or Betrayal, and give one sentence why. And here's the hook for what's next. There's a tiny wear pattern on his gear, easy to miss, that cracks one theory wide open. We found it. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee what it implies. Some crime scenes tell two stories. The one the killer wants you to see, and the one the evidence whispers when you look closer. At first glance, this looks simple. A man falls on a cold slope and never gets up. His valuables are still there. The copper axe, the bow, the quiver. Nothing is stripped. Nothing is scattered. That's the kind of scene that makes a village shrug and say, accident. And maybe that's exactly what someone hoped we would think. Let's test the easy excuses. Panic? A nervous thief might run without looting. But the shot was clean. There's no messy scuffle, no broken gear from a rushed hands-on struggle. Panic doesn't fit the control we see. Taboo? Maybe the killer feared a curse on the dead. But taboos don't stop you from taking anything. Yet some items are missing or moved, while the most valuable piece, the axe, is left like a calling card. That's not fear, that's a choice. Framing? Now we're getting warm. Leave valuables and it smells like misadventure. No motive, no suspect, no ripples back home. Look closer at how things lie. The axe doesn't look dropped in a scramble. It looks placed. Calm, easy. As if to say, he set it down himself. The bow isn't tangled like you'd expect after a fall. Small things line up too neatly for the chaos of a death in wind and ice. The surface story wants to be tidy. And then there's the tiny thing most people ignore. The thing that cracks one theory open. It's a wear pattern. Over years, leather remembers its owner. A shoulder strap digs a groove where it rides day after day. A buckle finds its favorite hole. On his gear, that groove sits where a strap ran across one shoulder for a long time. But when the body is found, that same strap is buckled for the opposite side, as if someone who didn't carry it like he did adjusted it, then left it looking normal. Why does that matter? Because wear doesn't lie. If he had the strength and time to rebuckle for the other side at altitude, bleeding and tired, we'd see other signs of careful resetting. We don't. What we see looks like someone else handled the gear after the shot, then arranged it to sell a softer story. A man who set his things down, then never stood up. That's staging. And staging points away from random violence. A bandit doesn't tidy your kit. A stranger doesn't think about how your people will explain your death. Staging is what you do when you have to go back and face questions. When you must return to a camp and say, "He never came back," without a tremor in your voice. So why leave the copper axe? Because taking it would light a fire of suspicion. Because leaving it makes the tale cleaner. No theft, no feud, just bad luck. Because the goal was never the object. The goal was the man, and the silence after. Your turn. If you wanted the world to believe accident, which would you choose? Panic, taboo, or framing? And why? Here's the part that flips the motive on its head. That little wear groove doesn't just prove someone touched his gear. It suggests that the person who touched it carried it differently than he did. That's not just a hand in the scene, that's a habit in the scene. A body's story and a strap's memory pulling in two different directions. If that's true, then this wasn't about taking what he owned. It was about erasing why he died. And that brings us to the final question we have to face next. Who benefits from a death that looks like no one's fault? Here's our verdict. We walk the last hour, step by step. He leaves the valley warm and fed. Roasted meat and grains settle heavy in his stomach. He trusts the plan. He trusts the path. He may even trust the person beside him. The hand cut still burns. His back and knees ache where the old tattoos mark pain. He climbs anyway. The route narrows. Rock walls squeeze the trail. Wind strips sound from the air. This is the kind of bend you do not rush. You look where you place your feet. You do not turn fast. Someone falls a few paces behind, or slips ahead, then waits where the trail kinks. They know his speed. They know his habits. They know that right here his left side will be open as he angles around the bend. One shot! The arrow comes from the rear quarter, slides under his left arm, and slices a main artery. The body reacts in seconds. Heat drops. Strength pours out. He takes a step, maybe two. He tries to turn, but there is no time. The mountain holds the sound. The shooter watches. No struggle, no shouting. It is done. Now the part most people never think about, what comes after the shot. The killer does not loot. They do not pry loose the copper axe that would make any stranger rich. Instead, they shape a story. The neat gear, the calm pose, a strap buckled the way a different shoulder would carry it. Small details that say, he set things down, he failed to rise. Not murder, misadventure. Why stage it? Because you have to go back. Because you must face people who knew him. Because you need a tale that draws no blood price, no revenge, no war between camps. He went up, he never returned. The mountain is cruel. Who can argue with ice? So what was the motive that beat gold? Not theft. Not a passing quarrel. This feels like removal, a clean end to a problem, a rival in a hunt or a trade path, a voice too loud in a small circle, a choice made in a world with no courts. Take away the man, not the goods, and leave as few ripples as possible. Every clue points the same way. The last meal shared close in time to the death. The pollen trail that draws him back up to a meeting ground. The fresh hand wound from an earlier clash. The ambush angle chosen for his weak side. The copper axe left to quiet suspicion. The staging that sells an accident. Put it together, and you see a simple, hard truth. This was personal, planned, and quiet. The killer was not a stranger in the snow. The killer was someone who could guide the pace, choose the bend, and touch his gear without fear. Here is our reconstruction. He climbs toward the pass slower than usual. The person he trusts sets the rhythm. They share a few words about the weather, the time, the last turn before the top. At the kink in the trail, he angles left. The other person steps where the view is clear and breath is steady. The bow lifts, the string hums, the arrow flies, he falls. The scene is smoothed, the axe is left as a seal on the lie. What does this case leave us with? That even 5,000 years ago, people treated pain, cooked with care, carried symbols of status, and made deadly choices with calm hands. That trust is a risk on any mountain, that a story can be arranged as neatly as gear on the ground. Your verdict time. Bandit, rival, or betrayal? Drop one word and why. And the final shock you already feel in your bones. The oldest homicide we can read in flesh and ice likely wasn't done by a stranger. It was done by someone close enough to share his fire, pass him the best cut of meat, and walk the last steps at his side.